This video is going to be my top 20 Beatles solo tracks. Now, I did a Beatles top 20 list a few days ago, and I found this list was a lot harder to compile. And I don't know if it was just because there was so much more material to choose from, but Paul definitely is far and away the Beatle that has the most solo output, followed by George and Ringo. I know Ringo's got a lot of stuff, but in terms of consistency, Ringo's is down near the bottom, obviously. And then John has the fewest, but I try to balance the distribution of tracks as best I could. But bottom line, I mean, these are my absolute favorites, not necessarily the best tracks from each Beatle, but my personal favorites, the one that I tend to gravitate to and always find myself listening to out of all the Beatles solo output. So gonna start at number 20 with Great Day, the Paul McCartney track from Flaming Pie. Paul and his acoustic guitar, anytime he does a song that is just him and his acoustic guitar, he always just does it fabulously. If you go back to the White Album with Blackbird and Mother Nature's Son and I Will, just fantastic. And I wish he would do more of it, but I'm glad that we have this gem on Flaming Pie because it's really a fantastic track and a great way to close out the album. Number 19, I'm going to go with Cheer Down by George Harrison. For my money, one of his best melodies. Just absolutely love the track. You can say it's been overproduced by Jeff Lynne, like he did most of George's later output, but I think it's perfect and flawless in every way. I think the lyric is typical cheeky George, and this was on a soundtrack. I don't remember exactly which soundtrack this was a part of, but you can find it on two of George's best of compilations. But just a fabulous track. I wish there had been more solo George towards the end of the 80s, 90s. There were the two Traveling Wilburys album, but not much apart from that. Cloud 9 obviously was brilliant, but I really wish we would have had more solo George after Cloud 9. And I think this track definitely, I'm glad we have it. I just wish there was more of it. Number 18, I'm going to go to Paul McCartney's Ram album for the lead-off track, Too Many People. Just a fantastic track. Now, you can call it a diss track against John. I don't know that he actually intended it that way. People can argue about that. I know John took offense, and he wrote How Do You Sleep in response to some of the tracks off the Ram album. But it's just a perfect track for my money anyway. And it's such a departure from the music that we got on the first McCartney album. It's Paul back in the studio with session musicians, determined that he's going to make a more polished record. And Too Many People, just right out of the gate, sets the tone, and it's just an incredible track. I love it to death. 17, I'm going to go to the Double Fantasy album, John Lennon's Beautiful Boy, an iconic track. It's been on so many soundtracks. It's really a timeless track, just an affectionate song for his son Sean, much in the same way that Goodnight from the White Album was written for Julian. Just brings out John's tender side. Not only is it a great melodic track, but the sentiment behind it is just so, like I say, any father can relate to it in terms of his son, and I think it's beautiful. 16 now, I'm going to go to Ringo Starr for the song Photograph, which was on the Ringo album. I can't imagine anybody other than Ringo singing this track. Just a gorgeous song, so perfectly suited to Ringo, and Richard Perry does great on the production of it. Absolutely love that song. 15, I'm going to go to John Lennon's Imagine album for the song Oh My Love. Another great love song for John, one of his most tender tributes to Yoko. I don't know if this was composed in the period of the White Album and the Get Back sessions, but it's absolutely a great track. 14, I'm going to go to Let Me Roll It on the Band on the Run album, a great Paul track. I think he wrote it with John in mind. Sounds a lot like something that you might have heard on the Plastic Ono Band a little bit, and I know John was tickled when he heard it because I think he realized that, it was sort of Paul doing a song in the style that John Lennon was more known for. But just gotta love that riff, just perfect. A great way to close out side one on Band on the Run. 13, I'm going to go to the Living in the Material World album, George's second solo album of the 70s, I should say. Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. One of George's best tracks. Just love the slide guitar riff on it. The gently strummed acoustic guitar. A perfect track on a flawed album, but what I consider one of George's best solo albums nonetheless. Number 12, I'm going to go to George Harrison again from the Cloud 9 album, When We Was Fab. A great sentimental track, kind of looking back, a retrospective on his time with the Beatles. And this is probably one of my favorite tracks off that album. Just love it. And the little, nods to the Beatles that he kind of throws in there, some inside jokes and whatnot. But the video too is great also. So When We Was Fab is number 12. Number 11, I'm going to go to the Plastic Ono Band album for the song God. Just the fact that John was brave enough to denounce all the icons of the 60s, Elvis, Dylan, even the Beatles, everything that he doesn't believe in, whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Gita, just kind of listing all the things that he doesn't believe in anymore. And then ultimately, of course, he does believe in he and Yoko. But just a great track on a great album. And I really think it's one of the best things that John ever did. Track number 10, gonna go back to Ram for Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey. Paul can craft such a great pop song, and it's a quirky song nonetheless, but it's so catchy. Even if the lyrics are somewhat nonsensical, Paul could sing absolute gibberish and make it catchy and just something that sticks in your head. And that's one of the earliest, when I was growing up, Paul McCartney solo tracks. It just hung with me. And I remember the first time I heard that. And even today, I can still listen to it time and time again and not get tired of it. Number 9, going back to Paul McCartney for Live and Let Die. Just a fantastic, bombastic soundtrack song from the James Bond film. And it's interesting that Linda kind of wrote that little middle 8 there about what does it matter to you when you got a job to do, you got to do it well, you got to give the other fella hell. Really cool. I wish that had found its way onto one of Paul's regular albums, but as it is, you can find it on the Wings' greatest hits and Paul's subsequent hits. And love when he does it live, when you got the fireworks and everything. So just a timeless track. And Guns N' Roses did a not too shabby version of it also. Number 8, I'm going to go to the All Things Must Pass, my favorite Beatles solo album of all time. For the leadoff track, I'd Have You Anytime, which George composed with Bob Dylan. Love everything about the track. It's just such an interesting choice for a leadoff track because, it doesn't come storming right out of the gate. It's not in your face. It's just a very laid back, kind of easy listening, and yet so affecting with George's slide guitar lead, his vocal, the George Spector production, everything about it. Everything that I love about that album is kind of encapsulated in the lead-off track. Number 7, I'm going to go with John's number 9 Dream from Walls and Bridges. Love the string arrangement, which is actually the string arrangement that he did for Harry Nilsson's Many Rivers to Cross, I believe it was, from the Pussycats album that John produced. He lifted the string arrangement almost intact from that track. So if you go and listen to the Harry Nilsson song, you can totally see why John would want to keep that for one of his tracks, because it's just beautiful. And I don't know how many people actually, bought Pussycats, or how many Beatles fans have really spent much time with that Harry Nilsson album, but I just love Number 9 Dream, and it's obviously one of my favorites. Number 6, gonna go with John again for Nobody Told Me from the posthumously released Milk and Honey album, which was a hit for John, and he almost gave it to Ringo. In fact, the version that's on Milk and Honey was a studio demo, but it's just a great track. It's got a great John Lennon, so typical of John with that lyric. It's got a great melody to it, great rhythm. John sings it great, and it's a great, just well-written song, so no wonder it became a hit. And my dad, who was not a big Beatles fan by any stretch, so it's interesting that I became such a big Beatles fan, but the fact that he loved that song told me that it was a great track, because if somebody who didn't care for the Beatles all that much loved a song like that, then that was good enough for me. All right, we're in the top 5 now. I'm going to go back to All Things Must Pass for my second favorite All Things Must Pass George song, with the ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. I just love the kind of arpeggioed guitar that runs through the track, kind of the echo that Phil Spector puts on it. Love George's vocal. Sir Frankie Crisp was the person who owned George's estate before George. That's who. I don't know if it was the owner before George bought it, but that's, I think, the original owner of George's property. And so it was like an ode to him, but just a beautiful, beautiful track. Never get tired of listening to it, and I think it's one of George's best. Number 4, I'm going to go with Paul's Band on the Run album. Again, Paul seemingly can, in the 70s, could just write hit songs in his sleep. And Band on the Run, I love the fact that he just, and Paul's great at this even in the Beatles days, taking 2 separate songs and just smashing them together. You know, the Stuck Inside These Four Walls, which is a totally different tempo, totally different medley, you know, or melody and everything from Band on the Run. And then he just sticks it, appends it to the beginning of the Band on the Run song, and it's just so perfect. So love that track. That is going to be number 4. Number 3, going to go back to the All Things Must Pass album for George, and Isn't It a Pity, kind of the most epic track on the album. You know, he kind of borrows a little bit from the structure of Hey Jude as it kind of fades off into the choruses of, you know, almost like the na 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 thing into the background, but just an affecting lyric. I know this was one I think that George was composing or had written right around the time of the Get Back sessions. And then he reprises it towards the end of the album, but I really love where it sits on that album at the end of side 1. Track number 2, I'm going to go with John's Instant Karma, more Phil Spector, and a song that was written very quickly and recorded very quickly, but I think one of John's most affecting tracks, one that will always be my absolute favorite. Never get tired of hearing it. I love the remixed version that was on the Give Me Some Truth box set recently, and I will fight you that this isn't John's best song. So, cheers. And then my number 1 favorite Beatles solo album. When I was a little kid, I actually heard this song and thought it was the Beatles. That's how closely, to me, it sounded like a classic Beatles track. And this is Paul McCartney's Maybe I'm Amazed, which is on the McCartney album. And, you know, it reminds me of Let It Be. It reminds me of Paul's best stuff on Abbey Road, a little bit of the White Album. Just a gorgeous classic McCartney track. For me, you know, his first album, the McCartney solo album, still I have such an affection for. And that track in particular stands out and reminds me so much of what I loved about the Beatles. And so that is my number 1. That's my top 20. You may agree or disagree, and I'd love it if you would share your top 20. Not many people have been doing that. In fact, nobody's really shared any of their top 20s of any of the videos I've done, but I'm definitely curious if you've tried this exercise, what you came up with. Thanks again for watching, and everybody take care.